Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. Today's video is going to be a really fun one. Last year I filmed this exact same video, the mid-year book freakout tag. I can't believe that I'm filming this again, that it's been a year and that it's officially already June. We're halfway done with 2023, which is insane to me, but here we are. And I thought it would be really fun to sit down and film this video once again and just basically share with you guys some of the books that I have been really loving this year. It's actually been a pretty good reading year for me, which I'm so surprised given the fact that I was pregnant for the majority of 2023 and then I gave birth in April, and I've been keeping up with my reading and I've read some really good books this year, which I'm super excited about. Let's go to Goodreads so I can share with you guys my reading goal for the year as well as how I'm doing with my reading goal. So for 2023, my reading goal is to read 65 books. I've actually already read 51 books in 2023 so far, which is crazy to me. I'm 22 books ahead of schedule. So like I said, I've been reading a lot despite me being pregnant and giving birth and taking care of my newborn. I read some books that weren't all that great, but I feel like the majority of the books that I've read this year have been really good books and have been books that I've really enjoyed reading. Let's just jump right into this mid-year book freakout tag. So the first question, best book you've read this year? That was such an easy book for me to pick, and the best book I've read this year so far is The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo by Taylor Jenkins Reid. I loved every single page of this book. I gave it a 5-star rating. The way it was written made me feel like I was right there with the characters, like I was living Evelyn Hugo's life, and the writing was just so captivating. The different characters were so well developed. Even the characters that you were meant to hate, you low-key loved because of how they were written. And this book was absolutely everything. I'm actually pretty late in reading this book because I think it came out a few years ago. It came out in 2017, I believe, and I just read it this year. I'm so mad at myself for waiting so long to read this book because it's one of the best books I've read in my entire life. If you haven't read The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo, go read it. I promise you, you'll enjoy it. Best sequel you've read this year, and I have read some pretty shitty sequels this year. I'm not gonna lie. A lot of the sequels that I've read this year have been huge letdowns, but this one I read and absolutely loved. It's another 5-star read for me, and that is Ignite Me. This is actually the third book, I think, in the Shatter Me series, and I loved everything about this book. It was super fast-paced, the drama, the action, the characters. 10 out of 10. It has cemented my love for the Shatter Me series. I haven't finished the entire series yet, but this book really cemented my obsession with this series because I think the first 2 books were like 3 stars for me. I think the second book might have been a 4-star. I don't really remember, but this book made me be like, okay, I'm definitely finishing this series this year because the characters are absolutely everything. This was definitely the best sequel I've read so far, and I don't think it's technically a sequel since it's the 3rd book in the series, but we're gonna go with that one because every other sequel that I've read this year so far has been a fail. New release you want to read but haven't read yet? That would have to be Happy Place by Emily Henry. Emily Henry is one of my favorite authors, and I love all her books except for People We Meet on Vacation. I could do without that one, but the rest of her books I absolutely love, and I'm really excited to read Happy Place because I've heard so many great things about that book, and I'm just excited to pick it up very soon and read it. I have to read it before summer's over, like no exceptions. Most anticipated release for the second half of the year. So my most anticipated release would have to be Lucian's book, and I don't even know what it's going to be called, but it is the 3rd book in the Knock 'em Out series. I actually own the first 2 books. The first book in the Knock 'em Out series was Things We Never Got Over, and the second book was Things We Hide from the Light. This series is by Lucy Score, and the 3rd book, I know it's purple, but I can't remember the name of the book. Go to Amazon real quick. Things We Left Behind. That is the name of the 3rd book. It's going to be released on September 5th, and I'm going to probably end up pre-ordering it so I can get it exactly on release day. I have been looking forward to this book since I read Things We Never Got Over. He deserved the 2nd book. Things We Hide from the Light was a huge disappointment for me, but I know that I'm just going to love this book because the little snippets I got from his character and from his love interest have just been everything. So I'm really excited to read that one, and I have a feeling that I'm just going to end up loving it. It's probably going to be my favorite book in the series because his character so far has just been 10 out of 10, and that's only only from the little bits and pieces I've gotten in the first 2 books of the series. Biggest surprise. This question was very easy to pick a book for because my first Taylor Jenkins read was Daisy Jones and the Six, and I read this thinking that I was going to hate it. Like 100%, I already had it set in my mind that I was going to read this book and I was going to sit down and talk about it and I was just going to hate it. But honestly, I ended up giving it 5 stars. Absolutely loved it. The synopsis doesn't do this book justice. Like, I put off reading this book for such a long time because I thought it was going to be super boring. I didn't care for the time period. I didn't care for the musical background. I didn't care for anything of that, and for that reason I thought I was going to hate it. But honestly, all the characters were written in such a way that I felt like I was living in the time period. I felt like I was alongside the band. I felt like I was a little groupie, a little fan. I struggled to really believe that this band wasn't real. Like, I finished this book and googled the Daisy Jones and the Six ever exists, because Taylor Jenkins Reid wrote this in such a way that you can't help but think that the characters are real. It was such a disappointment to learn that this book is in fact fiction and the band is not real, but in my mind they are real. In my mind they did exist, because this book was absolutely everything. So this definitely was my biggest surprise for 2023 so far, because like I said, I thought I was going to hate it and I ended up loving it. So I highly recommend for you guys to check out this book if you haven't done so already. Biggest disappointment. That was also very easy to find a book for, because I did not enjoy this book at all, and that is Practice Makes Perfect by Sarah Adams. So this is the sequel to When in Rome. It can actually be read as a standalone book, but I highly recommend to read When in Rome first, because the characters from that book are mentioned a lot in this book, and you also get a little background for the small town and for all the characters. Just read When in Rome first. But I really enjoyed When in Rome, and this one just felt so incredibly flat for me. It was so dull. I didn't really connect with the 2 main characters, didn't really care for their love story. I didn't even feel like they had actual chemistry. I felt like this book was trying so hard to be spicy while still trying to be close to a romance. So I really didn't like this book, and I had huge expectations for it, and it was just a big letdown. So yeah, not my favorite book by any means. Favorite new author. My favorite new author is probably Taylor Jenkins Reid. Can you tell? I've read 4 of her books so far. Every book aside from Malibu Rising has been a 5-star read for me. I have fallen in love with her writing. She is not a new author by any means, but she's new to me since 2023 was the year that I finally decided to read her books, and they have not disappointed once. I love her writing. It's so addicting. Like I've mentioned probably too many times already in this video, her books and her characters and her writing just makes you feel like you're living right there with the characters, and you're immersed in the story. You're dedicated to the story. You're dedicated to see the characters getting their happy ever ending. I'm obsessed with her writing right now, and I can't wait to read the rest of her books because I know that I'm just going to love them. Yeah, I'm obsessed with Taylor Jenkins Reid. Who would have thought? Because if you have been following me since last year, you would know that I mentioned a million times last year that I would never pick up any of her books, that they just did not seem interesting to me at all, and look at me now. I'm completely obsessed with her. Newest fictional crush. So this one actually took me a while to think about, because I haven't really read a book where I've been obsessed with the male main character. Honestly, a lot of the romance books that I've read this year have kind of been meh for me, and I haven't really been like invested in a fictional love story in a hot minute. But I finally remembered that I loved a character in Icebreaker, and it's not even the main character that I loved. It's a side character that I hope gets his own book someday, and his name is Henry. If you've read Icebreaker, then you know exactly who I'm talking about. Henry's personality was everything to me, and I can't wait to read his love story one day. Like, he needs his own book. If he doesn't get his own book, I'm done with this series, and I don't care to read any other book from this series unless it's Henry's love story. His character was just hilarious. 10 out of 10. Honestly, he stole the spotlight. Also, Warner from the Shatter Me series. I hated him in the first Shatter Me book, which I think you're supposed to hate him, but he has become everything. He's probably my second favorite fictional character right now. A book that made you cry. I thought about this one for a minute, and I had to like really think about it and try to trigger a memory of me crying this year because of a book. And honestly, I couldn't think of one time that I cried for a book this year. Maybe I did, maybe in one of my reading vlogs I cried about a book, but I honestly can't think of a book that actually made me cry this year. If you guys have watched my reading vlogs and remember me crying over a book, let me know in the comments below, because I honestly can't remember, and I don't think I've cried over a book this year so far. Last year I feel like I cried about every damn book because I read so many Colleen Hoover books that made me cry. Where the Crawdad Sings definitely made me cry last year, but this year no book has made me cry. Honestly, a book that made you happy. So I actually have two books for this question, and they're both by the same author because I enjoy this author's writing so much. It's just so wholesome. And the first book is Better Than the Movies by Lynn Painter. The second book is The Do-Over by Lynn Painter. These two books are just rays of sunshine. I love them so much. I had so much fun reading these two books, and it just made me incredibly happy. I love the characters. I love the romance. I loved the storyline, and it's actually pretty funny because both of these books are YA, and I normally don't like YA books at all, but I absolutely fell in love with these two, and they were almost 5-star reads for me, honestly. I highly recommend that if you want a cute, wholesome book, to definitely check out both of these because you're just going to enjoy them so much. If rom-coms are your thing, these are the two books that you have to read. I promise you, they're so freaking good. Most beautiful book you bought this year. This one was a hard one because I have a lot of books that I absolutely am obsessed with the cover, but I think that the most beautiful book that I bought this year has to be Things We Hide from the Light by Lucy Score, which is actually pretty funny because I hated this book, but I think the cover is so pretty. I love the florals. I also think that the cover for Practice Makes Perfect is also very pretty. Those two books are probably the most beautiful book covers that I currently own that I've bought this year. What books do you need to read by the end of the year? I definitely need to finish the Shatter Me series. I've read only the first 4 books, and I think there's like 6 or 7 books in the series, so I definitely want to finish it sometime in the summer, maybe July, I don't know, but I definitely plan to finish it very soon. In the comment section down below, answer some of these questions from the mid-year freakout tag. I would love to see your take on this tag. I'm really happy with my reading so far this year. Like I said at the beginning, I've read some really good books, and I'm very excited to continue reading for the rest of 2023 and to hopefully discover more 5-star reads. There are so many good book releases coming out later this year. I'm excited for summer reading, I'm excited for fall reading, and that is pretty much it for today's video. If you enjoy watching this video, don't forget to give it a big thumbs up. Don't forget to subscribe. I would love to have you part of my channel. I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye guys.